Welcome to Crossover Media's Featured Programmer of the Week. This week we have King FM Seattle's Assistant Program Director and Manager for the station, Second Inversion's Maggie Stapleton. Hi, nice to have you, Maggie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You oversee the programming and platforms for Second Inversion. Before we get to that, though, as Assistant Program Director, how much of your time do you spend with King FM's traditional programming?
That's a great question. And the balance, I would say, is about maybe 60% on Second Inversion and 40% on King FM. I directly help to manage our arts outreach team at King FM, so all the events that we do out in the community and also our local programming. And then I'm sort of our program director's second-hand woman, and we work together on lots of different exciting behind-the-scenes projects for King FM.
Oh, very cool. So how did you first get started in radio?
It's a great question. It was totally a right place, right time kind of situation. I had just finished a master's degree in flute performance in 2010 at UW and found myself needing a job and just happened upon a job opening for the music assistant at King FM. And one thing led to another. I guess my knowledge of classical music really helped, even though I didn't have any background in radio. And so I started in July of 2010, and I've been here ever since. And I've moved from our music assistant to our arts and programming coordinator, where I coordinated our live studio show for King FM, all of our live and local broadcasts. We do about 100 of those per year. We do a local interview show once a week, and I have to coordinate that. So all sorts of stuff. And then on into 2012, 2013, the Second Inversion project came along, and I've really taken the reins on that and managing all of our different aspects of that project.
Right, and you studied flute performance in college, right?
Yes.
Right. So how do you think the music education that you received studying flute and music helped you prepare for your roles at radio?
Well, I definitely think, like I said, when I started, I was our music assistant, and one of my main jobs was programming two of our internet streams, our Evergreen channel and our Symphonic Favorites channel. Evergreen is kind of relaxing classical music, a lot of solo piano, solo harp, that kind of thing. And then the Symphonic Favorites channel is all symphonic music, all stuff that you'd hear in the concert hall. So I think that just the general knowledge of classical music that I had acquired over, from middle school and high school and youth symphony to playing in college and studying music history and on into graduate school, I just had a solid foundation of classical music and was able to learn from Brian, our program director, some tips and tricks, as well as our music director, Aaron Stace, about how to, what makes good radio programming. And so I was able to kind of learn the skills of radio, but also apply just the knowledge that I had of classical music. At the same time, though, I would say it's amazing. Every day I walk into our station, our floor-to-ceiling shelves of CDs, and there's something new I discover every day. It's just amazing, the body of music that's out there.
Yeah, that's an incredible part of being in the radio business. You get new stuff every day. It's like Christmas.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a bit about Second Inversion and how it first started? Has it kind of turned into your dream job?
Yeah, it's so cool because, first of all, there's aren't many media outlets like Second Inversion out there that are focusing entirely on contemporary classical and kind of the outside of the box fringe classical music. So around 2012, so almost, 3 years ago, we did some focus group research with people in their 20s and 30s. A lot of them were music majors or people who were really interested in classical music or already listened to King, that kind of thing. And that's kind of an audience demographic that we felt like we could really tap into to grow. And so we took the findings from our focus groups. We asked them questions like, how do you listen to music? Do you listen to terrestrial radio? What do you want out of, a classical music station? What are you missing? And so myself and 3 other people on our staff who were kind of in that target demo were tasked with creating a project that would fulfill this role, this need. And so the 4 of us spent a lot of time after that, maybe 6 months or so, just putting our heads together, trying to figure out what this would look like. Everything from coming up with the name, Second Inversion, which if you know anything about music theory, then you know what a second inversion chord is and all like that. But even if you don't know, and that's probably been one of the most common questions is what's what's the deal with the name?
Yep, it was my next one.
People outside. It just, we were brainstorming, throwing ideas around, and somehow Second Inversion came up, and we're like, yeah, that, it really works because of the music theory connection, in time with classical music, but also it implies something new, something different, and that's definitely what it is. It's new and it's different.
Yeah.
So coming up with the name, designing the logo, we did that amongst ourselves, and working with the technology that we have to create an audio stream, much like so this is the 5th audio stream of King FM. We have King FM, Evergreen, and Symphonic, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. We have an opera channel, and now Second Inversion. So we're really able at King FM to cover a pretty wide variety of classical genres, and are able to reach audiences with different sort of niche offerings.
Right. So I also see in your About Us section on the Second Inversion website that Second Inversion is a project dedicated to rethinking classical music. I really like that description, and it seems like we're really at a point where classical music could use some rethinking. What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely, and that was one of the other, catchphrases that we brainstormed back in the beginning, was rethink classical. I think that describes what we're doing really, really well, and what we want other people to do. That's one of our goals, is to cultivate new listeners for the next generation of classical music, but make sure that they know that classical music isn't all Beethoven and Brahms and the classics, so to speak. There's so much out there if you look at 20th and 21st century music, even in that time period, there's such a huge, huge, broad range.
Yeah.
But what I'm discovering is some of the most interesting music, especially in this rethink classical vein, are some groups like Y Music, who is a New York-based ensemble. They're releasing an album with Ben Folds later this year, I think in the fall. Also in that vein, there are composers like Richard Reed Parry from Arcade Fire. There's Bryce Tyson from the National. People who are known best for music that's not classical, but they're creating these classical compositions and working with musicians to create these new genres. I've heard some terms that I kind of like indie classical and chamber pop, that I think are really pretty good descriptors of this new music that people are creating, and will, I think, shape the future, and that people will be writing music history books about.
Right.
This kind of stuff.
This time. Yeah. So how do you go about choosing the music? Obviously, as a new music platform, it's defined that way. But what are the other parameters?
My main parameter is if there's no chance we'll play it on King FM on the main channel terrestrial, then it's pretty fair game for Second Inversion. So, because we really want to create a place for this new music, and that where it can't be heard elsewhere. So you'll hear a pretty wide variety of music on Second Inversion. Composers like John Adams, that are, kind of becoming the pillars of the 20th century repertoire, to music that's being composed today of, say, Nico Muhly and Caroline Shaw and Mason Bates and all these up-and-coming young composers. You'll also hear, and this kind of goes into tapping into people who may be a little unsure about classical music or think it's stuffy, some kind of gateway ventures into classical music, such as, say, the Vitamin String Quartet playing covers of pop songs on their string instruments. Christopher O'Reilly, a pianist, has put out a lot of great albums of piano covers, things like that, that can kind of get people again to rethink classical, but rethink music in general. It doesn't have to be what it was originally intended.
Right. So, well, we're crossover media, so we love that you're covering, all types of artists that are crossing over into, it's not really able to define by one genre. Exactly. So there's a Second Inversion site, but does the platform also air on Classical King?
You can find the Second Inversion stream on king.org. So yes. As far as the the actual music itself, we are not on King FM yet. I hope that at some point in the future we can have maybe an hour-long program on the main channel on King FM that presents the flavor of music that we have, but maybe the more inside of the box classical, to give people a taste of it, and then we can send them to Second Inversion, the stream, for a little bit more.
Yeah. So on the website, kind of a blog website, do you mainly focus on album reviews and Seattle concert spotlights? Like, what other content do you like to include on there?
Yeah, those are the main things that we have on our blog currently. We're going to start soon expanding in July to doing, in addition to our album reviews, I mean, it's just amazing how many CD submissions I get on a weekly basis, both in the mail and digital formats are becoming even more
Yeah.
popular. And so I almost feel like it's hard to choose which albums to focus on for these reviews, just doing one per week. So we're going to add a feature where we will take maybe 3 or 5 additional albums and do a blog post each week that has just a little bit about each one, kind of in a staff picks kind of way, some of our staff members. But we'll also open that up to members of the community as well here in Seattle, people who are involved in music and are interested in getting involved with Second Inversion. And then we also will post announcements and things like that on our blog too, especially for live broadcasts. Currently we do about 5 or 6 of those per year from Seattle's Town Hall. Joshua Roman, who is our recently appointed artistic advisor, which is really exciting. He'll be doing lots of great stuff with us. He curates a 5 or 6 concert series at Town Hall, and we've been doing since June of last year, so about a year now. We've been doing live broadcasts of those to make sure that we spread that news on the blog as well.
Very cool. So with Joshua Roman, what other roles does he play in Second Inversion?
Sure. So Joshua Roman, as artistic advisor, will be contributing to our blog regularly. So that's another exciting blog feature that we'll have. Just kind of what he's up to and what he's listening to. And he's already posted a couple, and they're really, really great. And I look forward to seeing what more he has to come to us. He'll also be a voice on the stream. You can hear him every time you open it on your web browser. You'll hear and see a picture of Joshua Roman doing our pre-roll. And he'll also be more and more, as he comes to Seattle and visits, he'll be in studio recording some commentary and introducing pieces and essentially playing DJ a bit too. We also have some exciting video projects in the works with Joshua, some ideas for maybe doing some cool videos in Seattle with some cool Seattle scenery in the background, or also wherever he is in the world, because he travels quite a bit. He's based in New York, but he's always traveling and performing, so I'm kind of following Joshua where he goes.
Yeah. Can you tell me more about your amazing team? I think Jill Kimball, Rachel Hales, Seth Tompkins, and Maggie Malloy. Is that right?
Exactly. So Jill, Seth, and Rachel we're all the co-founders. When I was talking earlier about how 4 of us on staff and sort of the target demo, those are the 4. It's me, Jill, Seth, and Rachel. And we all have contributed in many different ways throughout the project. Rachel and Jill have really great web chops, so they helped cultivate all of the web stuff. Jill's a social media whiz, so she kind of helped get that going, and now I do most of the social media posting and all of that, but she was key in getting all of that set up. Seth and Jill both have really strong music backgrounds as well, so they've had a lot of great input on music selections. All 4 of us are announcers on the stream, and so that's been a really great training grounds for us in a lot of ways, as you know, maybe future announcers on King FM. And it's given us an opportunity to do that in sort of a training capacity. And then Maggie Malloy, the other Maggie, as I like to call her, she's been an absolutely fabulous intern who's done a great deal of writing for the blog with album reviews and local concert spotlights. So I couldn't ask for a better team. I feel like sometimes I get all the credit for Second Inversion, but it is absolutely a team effort, and I am so thankful to have all those great people on staff.
Yeah, you hit the jackpot there. So speaking of album reviews, we noticed that you included 2 of our projects at Crossover Media in your top 5 for the year.
Yeah.
I believe it was Olafur Arnold's The Chopin Project with Alice Sarah Ott and Christopher Bono's Bardot, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And Crossover Media is just constantly sending so much stuff
Yeah.
our way. That's great, great. I mean, just an absolute perfect fit. And I mentioned earlier about Joshua Roman. You'll hear him as a voice, but really, in addition to Joshua and me and Rachel and Seth and Jill and all the people on our staff, we also like to include other people too as guest voices. So what I do, either if people are in Seattle and coming through, or again with Crossover Media, you guys have set up a lot of really great phone interviews with people like the Zolfo piano duo, and recently Jason Bio and Yolanda Condonathis,
Yeah.
442s, and just the list goes on and on and on. And so instead of doing traditional interviews with these people, I find that really the most effective use of our time can be having them record introductions and outros for pieces that they've composed or performed in recordings, and then when we play those pieces on Second Inversion, we'll play their introduction before it and their outro after it. I think it gives the station a really great sound because there's a variety of voices. It doesn't really sound like a traditional radio station, which is kind of what we're after. And it's more meaningful than, say, me doing some research about the music and talking about it. It's really coming from the source. And I think that's, it really makes Second Inversion a community project, both regionally and nationally, globally.
Yeah. No, you're really making Second Inversion, like, people love to hear the artists talk about their music. I mean, it's great. So what do you envision for the future of the platform?
I hope that we can just keep, at this point, we're still pretty young, but I hope that we can keep growing it and getting more and more people interested, and also expand some of our partnerships. I mentioned wanting a King FM show someday to help our reach, but also collaborating with maybe another radio station here in town. KEXP focuses a lot on sort of indie music, but I listen to their stations sometimes and I think, man, that would be a really good fit for Second Inversion. So working with them to maybe create a joint King FM and KEXP program, but for the time being also just keeping my finger on the pulse of what's going on with the latest and greatest music that's coming out and reaching as many people as possible with it.
Yeah, that's great. So I have a few more fun questions to close out the Hangout. First, what's your favorite artist or composer that not many people have heard of, but is someone everyone should know?
Oh, that is a great question. And it's so hard to answer. I feel like in the classical world, they're kind of already pretty well known, but if people don't necessarily listen to classical music a lot, I always tell them to listen to Brooklyn Fighter, because I feel like they are so much more than your traditional string quartet, and their album, the Brooklyn Fighter Almanac, is one of my favorite albums of the last year. It is so fantastic, and I just don't know how you couldn't like that music. It's just great music. So,
yeah, we love the Almanac here.
Yeah.
All right, next question. What profession would you choose if you weren't a musician or if you weren't in radio?
I would probably be a teacher. And whether or not a music teacher, I'm not quite sure. But a public school teacher, I think, is the sort of alternative career path. If I had to start over, that's what I do.
Mm-hmm. If you could be a superhero, what power would you possess?
That is a good question. I think probably being able to fly.
Yeah. I think that'd be mine too. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Maggie, and congrats on being our Future Programmer of the Week.
All right. Thank you so much. It's such an honor, and it was great to talk to you.
You too. So for those watching, please feel free to check out this Hangout on our Crossover Media YouTube page. The username is crossovermedia.net. We also have a very active website, crossovermedia.net, where you can check out the latest on our artists and music news and radio stations that we work with. You can also access our Facebook, Twitter, and SoundCloud pages in the upper right-hand corner of our homepage as well. So thanks again, and see you next time.